The key to improving the TCU run game is simplicity, according to their offensive coordinator.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 seasons. We are talking about TCU football today, really a football-heavy show. I will get into in the last segment TCU baseball, a big series with Kansas starting on Friday night tonight. I'm recording this on Thursday, so I got my days mixed up. But it's starting tonight, that series is. Thanks for making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen. We'll jump right into it. We're going back to spring camp, spring practice, happening right now. Everybody take a drink. It doesn't have to be of the adult variety if you don't want it to be, but our drinking game, I'm here to talk about the TCU run game and the need to improve it this upcoming season. I've done that a lot this offseason. I've done it a lot over the past few years, but Sonny Dykes mentioned it after practice on Wednesday. He said, look, it's no secret. Everybody knows we got to get better at it. Last season, we struggled to do it, especially, and he mentioned this specifically, when people knew we were going to run the ball. When we were in those situations, whether it was short yardage, and we've seen that. We've talked about it. 3rd and short, 4th and short, near the goal line. There has been a lot of creativity from Kendal Briles, and I don't necessarily use that in a positive way. And the reason is they haven't felt like they're able to get the push they need to get in the end zone, or that they have the backs that they need to run through tackles and get in the end zone. And so I wanted to do a little bit more of a deep dive into how much can this team actually improve? Because I don't think they're suddenly going to become the 2022, or funny enough, I was looking at numbers in 2021, they really ran the ball well. Their problem was they couldn't throw the ball, and the defense really struggled. And so it led to a disappointing season. But Zach Evans, when he was healthy, Kendre Miller, those guys were really good at toting the rock and making things happen. Kendal Briles said this. This is from Steven Johnson from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. The offense coordinator spoke today after practice, or on Thursday, I should say. Kendal Briles says TCU has scaled down on the different types of run plays they'll utilize. He says the focus has been mastering the concepts they do run. To translate, instead of running 12 different run concepts, let's perfect the 6 or 7 we did well last year. Like most things that coaches say, you can take that however you want. Here's my view on it. Okay, that's fine. I don't think that suddenly makes you a great team running the ball. Some people said, well, what about predictability, right? Like, what if the teams know if you're just going to run these same 6 or 7 run concepts, are they going to hone in on that and be able to stop it? I feel like there's more nuance there than he's letting on. There's different motions, there are different looks, different formations they can give the defense, but it's the same concept. And for, the rules the offensive line are following, the rules the running backs are following, it's all very similar. But it's about, okay, let's rep this. This is a popular idea in air raid circles, not running the ball itself. That's not really popular in air raid circles. But going back to the late, great Mike Leach, one thing that he centered his offenses around, he always had the very thin playbook, right? It looked like he was just reading off a card. Well, his idea was, or his logic was, we're not going to run that many plays. We have plays, we have concepts. We're going to rep them so much in practice that it just becomes muscle memory, that our players understand what to do. And we're going to know them so well that we can adjust on the fly. So based on the coverages, there's different things our receivers can do to break off routes or run different routes. The quarterback knows that. There's unsaid communication, and they can work that way. Okay, so that's what they want to focus on. How much better does it need to get? TCU's leading rusher last year, it wasn't Savion Williams, even though he did a really nice job in the back half of the season. It was Cam Cook, who was now at Jacksonville State. He hit the transfer portal this offseason. He had 460 yards and 119 carries. He averaged 3.9 yards per carry. His long run this year, the longest run of his season last year, was 19 yards. The explosiveness was not there. Jordan Bailey had a 59-yard touchdown run against Oklahoma State. Trent Battle had a 24-yard run. Payne had a 32-yard run. Savion Williams had a 35-yard run. They've got some explosives from other players. Cam Cook was not one of those guys. As a team, they averaged 3.7 yards per carry. Well, how bad is that in comparison to what they've done over the past few years? Well, in 2022, in 2023, they averaged 4.5 yards per carry. Amani Bailey was your leading rusher with 1,209 yards on 223 carries. And then in 2022, the outstanding season, they averaged 5 yards a carry. Kendre Miller himself averaged 6 yards a carry, 1,399 yards. Amari DiMercado averaged 5.5 yards per carry. That was a really good offensive line. So you see the trend there. Part of the yardage numbers are, in 2022's case, they played more games. But you look at what Amari and Kendre did, they were getting their money's worth every time they touched the football. So it wasn't like these were just compilers over an amount of time. These dudes could run the ball. They had an offensive line that was moving and shaking and making things happen. Savion Williams was the Band-Aid at the end of the year. But even that sort of fizzled out as the season went on. If you look at his game log, now in the Baylor game, he had 8 rushes for 57 yards. Against Arizona, he had 9 rushes for 80 yards. But in 2 of the 3 last ball games, against Oklahoma State, 5 carries for 19 yards. Against Cincinnati, 8 carries for 10 yards. And that was the game where it was snowing and it was cold. And at the end of the ball game, they brought in Haas Haney and let him run the offense. But it was a good idea. It was an innovative idea. It served its purpose. As the year went on, it started to fizzle out. It wasn't as effective. They're going to have to get away from that for 2 reasons. One is what I said. There's just not a lot of staying power. But secondly, they don't have anybody that's built like Savion this year. They have some explosive players, but I don't think they have anybody at that wide receiver spot that can really take the hits that he took over and over in the last 6 games of the regular season. So how do you do this? Okay, you're going to simplify the run game. It still comes down to this. Can you move people off the line of scrimmage? Can these running backs find those extra yards, those dirty yards? Part of this is just as simple as if it's 1st and 10, instead of stringing out a run all the way to the sidelines, is somebody able to put their head down and just get 3 yards and put you in 2nd and 7 instead of 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 12? That sounds very simple, but it makes a big difference in play calling. It makes a big difference in staying on schedule. And then who are the running backs that are going to pop and make big plays? The thing that gives me pause right now, I like Ryan Hughes. I'm hopeful for him. I feel like it's just inevitable. There's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some bumps in the road when you're talking about a true sophomore starting at left tackle. Now, maybe for him, that's going to be more in the pass game. Because last year, one thing to note about the offensive line, they did a pretty solid job in pass protection. It was the run game where they struggled to open up seams. And part of that's on your running backs too. I guess my conundrum is you didn't really add anyone to help the offensive line. You've got some new personnel. Cade Bennett's coming back from an injury. Colton Dury sliding over to center. Hughes is going to play left tackle. You've got some transfers battling out at right guard. Ben Taylor Whitfield on the other side. So you have some new faces, but they've been within the program. At running back, your addition has been Kavorian Barnes from UTSA, who had a nice career up until last year, dealt with some injuries and never really got back to being that really productive running back that he was early in his career for the Roadrunners. So where's that change coming from? Now, the good news is a minute ago, slight improvements shouldn't be that hard to find. Can you just get somebody over 600 yards rushing this season? Can you get to 4 or 5, 4.5 yards a carry instead of 3? That in itself would make a big difference. I will also say this. The run defenses that TCU is going to face this year are going to be tougher and more physical than the ones they faced last year. Iowa State, Kansas State, maybe Colorado. They've done some work on the D-line. We'll see what they, end up doing this offseason. But we're talking about some defenses that bring the wood a little bit more than what you saw at the end of last season. So can you match that physicality? And if simplicity helps that, go for it. But that in itself is not going to solve the running game woes. When we come back, we'll keep talking spring camps. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Are you starting to freak out? Did you look up at the calendar and say, oh man, it's April 10th? About a week ago, I looked up at the calendar and I said, wait, it's almost the end of March. We're coming up on April. Taxes are due on April 15th. I better get on this. So I simply went to TurboTax. I've used it before. It's now easier than ever, and they have special tools that can help you. This message is from sponsor Inuit TurboTax. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and worrying and wondering some more. Now taxes is just matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while getting you real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file away every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you'll get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. Again, that's TurboTax.com/guarantee. TurboTax, take the stress out of taxes today. Some other notes from spring practice. We talked a lot about the run game in segment one. One aspect of that offensive line, Colton Deary moving over to center. And it's not really a move per se because it's a position that he played in the past. He was at center at Maryland. He's been there before he came to TCU. So this isn't a big transition. But Kendal Briles did note that he dropped 20 to 30 pounds this offseason. So, hey, has some more athleticism out there. You have to be athletic to play the center spot. Really any place on the offensive line. You're going to be pulling from that tackle spot, possibly guard, but at center, you're snapping the ball. If you got to make a reach block, if they do use you in the run game and the fact of pulling around occasionally, that's something that he could do at a higher level now. So good news on that front that he is more athletic than he has been. And this is a huge key to this offense. I mean, as great as Josh Hoover was last year, I think in a perfect world, there's more pressure taken off of him. And the turnover issues, some of you took issue with last year when I was praising Josh and he was having problems throwing picks. Having a more balanced and complete offense is also going to help your turnover issues. Because as I said when I was talking about it last time, it's not an excuse. It's just a reality. It felt like a lot of his interceptions came from moments where he was just trying to do too much. They were behind or they were trying to come back or things weren't going well for him. And he was just forcing the ball, like forcing throws, making bad decisions, trying to throw into double teams. That tech play is a perfect example. He's rolling out to his left or to his right, and it's a scramble drill. And maybe he could have just tucked it and ran for a little bit and either set up a more comfortable down and distance or get a first down. But instead, he looks up, he sees somebody kind of on a wheel route get just a glimpse of light of someone being open, and he fires it and it gets tipped up in the air and intercepted. That poor decision making can't happen, but hopefully you're in a more balanced offense where you're not playing in those scenarios as often. It's part of it. You're going to be behind in games. There'll be games where you don't play well and you're trying to will your team back into it. But you have to keep your cool and make good decisions. Andy Avalos also spoke with the media today, and he praised Chad Woodfork and John Schobel. Says they're high character guys, and they're usually the first there in the film sessions. Chad Woodfork looks the part. Schobel, we'll see what his progression looks like. He is kind of moving from inside linebacker to an edge spot, but football runs in his family. So I think the move is going to be quicker for him than most when we talk about making plays and making things happen. And I saw a clip on social media. The TCU football account will put out clips from time to time of Austin Jordan coming up and just ripping the ball away from somebody on a reverse kind of jet sweep play. This safety group, this secondary, I like what they have working there. And Jordan's a guy that didn't really pop in year one, but slowly seemed to carve himself out a role. And if they can get more dynamic players in the back end who can force turnovers, that's going to be huge for this defense. I mean, going back to 2022, that's something they did pretty well. They were able to get turnovers and get stops when it was like, all right, backs against the wall, or, hey, we need to step up, get a stop on this third down so we can get the ball back and maybe go score again. They found a way to do it, which was awesome to see. But whether it's Jordan or Bud Clark, and then another name to know, I mean, Kylan Jackson was a 4-star, top 100 type of recruit. Louisiana guy that LSU was all over. He is an athletic force of nature. So whether it's breaking up passes, getting picks, forcing fumbles, all of that is hugely beneficial for this TCU team, because through the first half of the season, they didn't have that last year. And I think part of that was probably you're getting used to a new scheme, play calling, all the verbiage. What are your responsibilities? It felt like at times, especially those 2 weeks against UCF and SMU, you were watching a defense that was playing in slow motion. It was like the offense was 3 or 4 steps ahead of them. But then as they got their feet under and they got their bearings more, you saw some of those splash plays happen. The tackles for loss, sacks, forcing fumbles, getting interceptions. So that's a welcome sight for this TCU team this upcoming season. But a lot of good vibes coming out of spring camp. Again, this is a veteran group. There's not a ton of position battles. They're really banking on continuity and just building and getting better with what they have being what takes them this year, right? It's not about adding a ton of talent. They went and got 8 players in the portal. We'll see what they do in the spring portal window. Of course, you have to also factor in the idea of what does it look like? What a roster limit's going to look like? Now, it sounds like, the judge that's here in this house settlement has brought up the issue of why don't we grandfather in at least this roster limitation situation? Why don't we give this some time to build and develop so that we're not just all right, in a month, you got to get down to 105 when you're at 125 or something crazy like that. But they are all in on, we feel like we have the pieces in place to play at a high level. We got a returning quarterback, a defense that's building. It's about those guys getting better, meshing more with the team, and becoming more dynamic this upcoming season. I do think they'll add one or two more pieces in the transfer portal, but I believe it's going to be just depth guys for the most part, like dudes that, hey, we need somebody in this too deep. Let's go get another defensive lineman. Let's go get a linebacker. When we come back, TCU baseball with a huge series this weekend. We'll talk about that next round. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. One quick note on a TCU player who is departing the transfer portal, Frankie Collins. He is committed to Vandy, the school that he actually got injured against last year. Had that injury at Dickies Arena in that game against Vanderbilt during non-conference play, and then couldn't end up playing the rest of the season. But he's headed to, I think that's school 4 for Frankie now. Michigan, Arizona State, TCU, Vandy. Yeah. So moving on, best of luck to him. It's hard to say it's a loss, not because he's not a good player. Like, I think he's a good point guard, but we never really got to see. I mean, we got 10 games of the Frankie Collins experience. He was hurt. He didn't really play a whole lot or at all. And then he's moving on. So Brock Harding steps in his place as the team's new point guard, Jaden Pierre, their scoring threat. And aside from that, right now, they're going all in on bringing guys back. So Jace Posey, Micah Robinson, David Punch. Those are the dudes who are going to be carrying the torch this upcoming season. TCU baseball, big series. They are currently 1 game behind Kansas for first place in the Big 12. Now, there's a few other teams that are bunched up right there with them, West Virginia, Kansas State. But they play Kansas this weekend at Lupton, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're coming off a rough midweek loss to UTA in Arlington. Dropped that game 6-4. The rotation this weekend, I would imagine, Tommy Lepore, Cademan Parker, and then TBD on Sunday. This is a Kansas team that can mash. That is what they do. They lead the Big 12 in home runs with 74 so far this year. They're hitting 307 as a team. Brady Ballinger has a 411 batting average. He's got 12 home runs. Jackson Hogg has 15 home runs. Kansas as a team has a 4.38 ERA. So they've been scored on this year, but they hit the ball. So Lepore and Braden Sloan on Friday night got to be good. Braden struggled in that series against BYU. Now, he only ended up with 1 appearance, and maybe he just got thrown off because it was a weird week with the doubleheader on Thursday and the game on Friday. But he got shelled, so hopefully he can bounce back. I think the key is going to be your third starter. As good as this Kansas team is at hitting the ball, I do feel like Lepore and Parker will be able to hold up well. But I don't know where you go with your Sunday guy, because Cole Klecker sort of had that role going, but I mean, Cole's been known to give up the long ball. So I don't know if that's a great matchup for him to start the game. And, the way he challenges the strike zone, he could give up a few bombs. Trevor Baumler, it's been an adventure. Noah Franco the same way. The reality is it's most likely just going to be kind of all hands on deck situation on Sunday. And the hope is that on Friday and Saturday, you can do a good job with your starters and not have to use a lot of arms, so that on Sunday, more players are available. And a big weekend for this lineup too, because it's not been super consistent. Now, some of the guys have been. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder's been great. Noah Franco, Chase Brunson is really heating up and playing at a high level. But the depth hasn't been there 1 through 9. And against the Kansas team that is relentless when it comes to scoring runs, you have to approach every inning like, hey, we got to have some urgency here. TCU's been really good in some late game situations when they've gotten down by 4 or 5 runs. In BYU's case, get down by 6 runs in the 7th inning, you fight back. But this is going to be a tough team to come back against, because if you give up 5 runs in the first, that's probably not all the scoring they're going to do in one day, because they have some serious depth in their lineup. So big weekend series, really the first test. I mean, TCU baseball has been playing better, but the first test in a while for this group. And Kansas is also playing ball at a high level. So it should be fun to see those two teams square off. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll be back on Monday. Locked on Horned Frogs. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever you get your podcasts.